I have a music lessons and recording studio in Atlanta, Georgia. And your content, you and Layla, what you've done has profoundly changed my life because you've put me out of my comfort zone in how I think. And so I sell music lessons to neurodivergent kids between 8 and 18. We have $500,000 of revenue.
Awesome.
I think we could be at $2 million of revenue.
This business is broken, and Alex Hormozi just called it out live on stage. Welcome back to Daily Revenue Report, and in this intense live Q&A discussion, Alex Hormozi goes head-to-head with a studio owner stuck at $500,000 in revenue. He exposes the brutal truth about pricing, profit margins, and why most service businesses secretly bleed cash. Watch as Alex Hormozi dismantles this model in real time, breaking down LTV to CAC, forcing higher prices, and rebuilding the entire business using first principles thinking. If you're trying to scale, struggling with margins, or stuck in that busy but broke trap, this is the wake-up call you need. So hit that like button and hit that subscribe button because we drop videos like this every single day.
And what's stopping me is I've realized that the model is completely broken. I'm underpriced, I'm overcompensating the staff, we're underutilizing capacity in terms of
Square footage,
time, and physical space and time. And so my question is, how would you apply first principles thinking to what I should do now, next, and later to run the business that I've got as we make the transition to one that becomes an asset?
Yeah. So basically the core, so there's a chunked down version and a chunked up version of the core economic engine that makes a business successful. So LTV to CAC is the smallest version of that engine. You put some money in, you get more money out. That's the gross profit you run the entire business off of. At a higher level, it's return on invested capital, right? So it's like, okay, that's what the core machine is, but then there's also equipment, there's leases, there's build outs, there's all that stuff that goes into it that's not typically included in LTV to CAC. And then how much does it cost us to build this machine again and again? So that's kind of how I think about it. Like micro level, it's LTV to CAC. Return on invested capital is what it is at the macro level. When you're like opening more and more locations and saying, it cost me $500,000 to open a location makes me $500,000 within the first 6 months. Okay, cool, I've got a 2-to-1 return on capital within a year, which is awesome, right?
So look, this makes a lot of sense, right? If you have a business that costs you $100,000 to open up a new location and you make $200,000 your first month versus another business that takes $100K to open a location, but you only make $100K in your first year, if the LTV to CAC ratio and amounts are the same in each business, which business would you rather have? Obviously the one where I could make, $100,000 profit in my first month and not the one that takes me a year just to break even.
So let's tactical for you. So the nice thing about the music business is that it's actually identical to the gym business, so I know a lot about it. And so the models that I have seen works unbelievably well have been semi-private models, number one, or the 30-minute, multiple times a week, much higher ticket. People stay 3, 4, 5 years with music lessons with their person. I prefer semi-private because I think you get more loyalty to the brand, and it's less about the music teacher who can then leave and then take all of those students and go private. And so I like semi-private in general. Also, I'm sure you could sell around the idea that they get a little bit more socialized, and it's probably good for them and all that jazz. And in terms of pricing, I want my gross margins to be at least 80%, ideally 90%. And so now you can do that when you're 1-on-6, harder 1-on-1. And so if let's say you have 6 kids, right, in a class, or 4, I mean you can level into it. But let's say it's 1-on-4, keep it math simple, and you charge $200. $50 per session times 4 kids is $200. You make $200 per session, right? Well, for you to pay for an hour of a music teacher's time, what does that cost?
Right now, that would be $40 to $50.
Okay, so that's 80% right there. So 240, so 80% gross margins right there. Now, if you charge $60 a session, you'd be at 240, so then you'd be at like 84, whatever, in terms of gross margins. So you're above that. But that's my rule of thumb for brick and mortar service businesses is I want it to be over 80, ideally over 90, but I will not do a business if it has lower than 80% gross margins. Some people do, I just don't like to. Because you don't have enough cash to do anything.
Right.
And so then the question is, okay, how do we create the sales process and the positioning so that, now you already are working with a special class of customers. And so I would imagine that you would be able to probably even more easily than a traditional music academy sell at a premium price.
One thing that can always separate you from the competition is to go after the customers that are harder to service. Now, in this industry, it's the neurodivergent children. Nothing against anything neurodivergent or anything like that. But the reality is they are harder to service, right? It's going to be harder for you to get employees, and it's going to be harder for you to find the clients in the first place. So because of that, you can charge a premium. Try to find that thing in your industry that allows you to do the same thing, to have that little niche where you can charge a premium and your business will be a lot easier to grow.
Because if I'm a parent who had a neurodivergent kid, I would be willing to pay for a specialist. And so specialist prices are a premium. So I think that would work. And in terms of the model, you can, I mean, it's just headcount divided by teachers, basically. But you have to get the core gross profit right in the business, and then everything else kind of flows from there.
I'm kind of in the same position that this guy over here was, and I don't have an operator, and so I'm kind of in that swamp too, and trying to.
So we have to get more margin. You have to get more cash flow. Cash flow allows everybody to breathe better.
So, okay, I guess that makes sense. We'd raise prices and get that different sort of client funding.
Sell 1-on-4 and say, and just sell around the fact that it's a better experience for them. Because you don't want them to be married to a teacher. You want them to be married to, like, this is how I would sell it. I would say, listen, Mrs. Whatever, like, if your child becomes really attached to a single teacher, then if that teacher leaves, then all of a sudden this skill that they spent all this time on, they'll associate with the teacher, and then all of a sudden they stop playing violin after 5 years. You don't want that, I don't want that. What we want is to create a positive relationship with the skill so they just continue for life, right? Right. And so we facilitate that by having other people in the sessions, and so that the teachers sometimes do change so that no one really goes too attached to anybody, but they really grow attached to the craft. That's how I would sell it.
The last thing you want in a business where the talent is hard to acquire. So in order to get a good music teacher, you have to find someone with years, sometimes decades of experience in order to fulfill that role. That's why they're getting $50 an hour. That, and there's not many hours you work in a week as a music teacher unless you're completely booked. So the last thing you want in this type of business is for this person to go out on their own. I mean, you can give music lessons at home. So there's a risk of your employees kind of taking your clients if they exit your business. So the advice here from Alex Hormozi is not letting these children get attached so that they're addicted to the craft and they know where to go to get good teachers in general, not just this one specific teacher that they fall in love with.
Whether that's true or not, no idea. But that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, that's how I'd sell it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, so that would be my positioning. And I think if you just switch the ratio to 1-on-4, and so, okay, everybody. So if you are capacity constrained, so some of you guys are in that position, like you can barely handle the customers that you have right now. You have 3 solutions. The easiest solution is you just raise prices. Because if you have supply constrained, then that means that you have more demand than you have supply, prices go up, right? And most people just don't do that and just suffer. So just raise the prices, make more money. That's solution number 1. The second solution is changed client delivery ratio, which we just covered. So instead of going 1-to-1, you go 1-to-4. So you get more out of what you already have. This gives you leverage, and it gives you cash flow, improves your gross margins. The third way is to bring other people in who can do what you do, which is then delegating, the responsibility, right, to somebody else. So that's the ultimate leverage, so you don't have to do any of it. Does that make sense? So those are kind of like the 3 steps that I think about when I have somebody who's supply constrained and they don't have any time. They can't grow the business, and they can't sell more customers, but they need to sell more customers to grow the business, and it's the rock and hard place. And the nice thing is we start with price because it's the fastest and easiest one to do. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to change anything. You just say a different word, and then you'd make more money.
So our primary thing when we opened was it was 100% private lessons.
Yeah.
And so that's basically the only difference in the hypothetical gym and gym launch, which I'd read the whole thing on the plane over here. You know, how I didn't know that book didn't exist until
It's a good book.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But like, so what would the
You can still have one-on-one. You can still have one-on-one. Just, I would predominantly sell semi-private.
Right.
And if someone's like, well, I want the special snowflake treatment, then you're like, awesome, I'll give you this special snowflake price.
Right. How would you design the initial offer for that type of model?
Look, it's pretty simple, especially when you're already established in your niche and in your location, your area. If it costs more time for you to fulfill the service, you need to charge more. And it's an exponential increase, right? Because if it takes me an hour to teach 4 children, but it takes me another hour to teach 1 person, I'm not going to charge, say, $50 for the 4 and then $200 for the 1. Why not? Well, because with 4, you're protected. If 1 person drops out, that's only $50. But if you have this 1 person paying you $200 and they drop out, that's $200. So you need to account for that. Charge $250, $300, $350 for that hour instead. Plus, it's not as scalable. There's not as many clients out there willing to pay that. So you don't really want to make that a core part of your business model. Make sense?
The 6-week beginner challenge
So
version.
I would have, so you would know this, you would know the outcome better than I do, but it would be something, whatever the fast outcome that you can deliver to a kid who's neurodivergent, who picks up a violin, or whatever the instruments that you teach are, right? It's like, they'll be able to play this, like a song in this period of time, right? Now it might not be good, but like they'll be able to, you'll recognize it kind of, right? But like I would want some sort of discrete outcome. And that would be like an outcome. You could also do some sort of subjective thing, which is that like they rate X, or they, like you could have a survey at the beginning, survey at the end. That would be kind of more of an internal thing.
Got it.
But yeah, typically you'll sell some sort of package up front. I'm going to guess that the price point for what you're looking at is going to be between $600 and $2,000 is what the upfront package would be, and then you would upsell or at least let people go into continuity on the back end. And it'd probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 6 weeks to 6 months. You would know that range better in terms of how long to sell for.
Okay. Yeah, and the best thing, we're drowning in content 'cause we're a recording studio. So
Yeah.
these kids are making songs all the time.
Yeah.
And they should be feeding the marketing, but
Yeah.
it's just so much. Then there's that whole problem. But
Yeah, you just need time, man. Like, I think what's interesting is that like the more stressed you are, the lower, this is not me, this is not a slight, just to be clear, I'm saying in general. The more stressed anyone is, the lower your IQ is. And so I'm saying this to say that, again, this isn't a you
No,
thing.
it's fine.
I'm saying that
You're right.
the problems that you struggle with when you are stressed, when you have a good night's sleep and a little bit of time, you solve in like 5 minutes. And so if you want to increase your capacity, it's like, let's solve for capacity. And then a lot of these things that are keeping you up at night, you're like, oh, we'll just run a 6-week thing or run a 12-week thing. We'll sell it for this. I can see how the margins work out. And like, we already have more demand than we can handle. So it's okay if people say no at our higher prices, because we'll make it up in profit anyways on the people who do say yes. Does that make sense? That wasn't a slight, to be clear. I'm saying for anybody.
that's fine. Yeah, no, it's true. So
Cool.
I appreciate
If this breakdown from Alex Hormozi just flipped how you think about pricing, margins, and scaling your business, don't ignore it, implement it. This is the kind of real, no BS insight most people never hear until it's too late. So hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another video.